Good evening. This is Wednesday, and Wednesday is showtime. And I'm so excited to have you joining us this evening. And for those of you who are joining us on Facebook or on LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever you're streaming from, welcome. And I trust that tonight is going to be your night. And I'm not too sure if you have ever felt alone. But I certainly have. And I think there are moments in every year, there are moments in every stage of life, there are moments in every week, every month, sometimes every day or every hour that you may feel alone. And I've got some examples that I thought I would share with you this evening. But before I do, I'd like to just welcome our very committed associate all the way from Rudderpoort. Henny will be joining us in the panel this evening, and I'm so excited to have him share with us. We're going to also be getting together in the morning because we have a weekly map cafe. And the exciting thing about Henny, for those of you who don't know him or haven't met him, he has been translating Map for Life into the Afrikaans language, which is one of the official languages in South Africa. And we are so excited to see that unravel. So we have the gems on leadership all available in Afrikaans for this year. We're creating videos of stories, and we would like to invite you. If you are passionate about Afrikaans, if you love that language, please let us know. We'd love to have you share your thoughts and ideas on some of the gems of leadership this year. But let's talk about this topic tonight, standing alone. I thought I would begin of the moment or the first time that I remember standing alone. And, you know, it happened to be in a shopping center. And I was about 4 years of age. I'm sure I was about that height. I was standing in the shopping center, and I was absolutely convinced that my mother was right there beside me. And I turned around and she had vanished. It was like the rapture had taken place. My mother was gone. And I knew in that moment the feeling of loneliness. In fact, it wasn't just a feeling of loneliness. It was like fear gripped my heart. I mean, imagine here I am at this stage in my life, and I still remember that moment. Looking around, where's Mom? She's gone. And, you know, she was standing right next to me. I just turned a different direction. And when I looked, she wasn't there. She was this side. And, you know, I felt absolutely alone in that moment. There's another time I felt alone, and I was in grade 7, and we had gone as a family on tour to Cape Town. And one of the things that you do when you go to Cape Town is you visit the Cape Town Castle, or at least that's what we did as a family. And we went to the Cape Town Castle, and we had this tour of all the really boring things. I mean, they were talking about history. Who's interested in that stuff when you are 11 years, 12 years of age? And me and my 3 siblings were bored stiff. And we were going around and following Mom and Dad and with this group. But then we were taken into the children's paradise. It was the dungeon in the castle. And we walked down this long ramp into the bowels of the earth, as it were. And this guide that had us there waited for everybody to cram inside the dungeon. And he began to tell us the incredible stories of the infamous people or notorious people that were housed inside that dungeon. And, you know, as we listened to him, he told us about one individual, a serial killer, I guess, in today's terms. He had been kept in this dungeon. He'd been given a death sentence. And he talked about this man writing his name in, or carving his name in the corner. I won't describe exactly how he described it, but of course, the way he talked about it got our imagination going all over the show. I mean, we were curious and fearful in the same moment, but we rushed over to that corner. You know, he had told us, of course, that this guy's ghost still haunted the dungeon, but that didn't deter us as children. We ran into the corner to go and see where this guy had carved his name out of the very rock in which the dungeon had been excavated. And while we were trying to find his name, the guide switched off the light. I can tell you right now that in that moment, I thought I was the only person inside that room, but the problem was I couldn't see myself. That's how alone I was. The room was as black as my shirt. There was nothing there. And again, you're in that place of absolute, almost, the air got colder. I felt like I was in an icebox all of a sudden. There was no one around, but someone lit a candle, or flicked on a lighter rather, and all the children flocked around that person like moths to a flame. I've felt alone, and I know that many of you have felt alone. I felt alone seeing a falling star coming down through the heavens. You know, you're seeing it streak across the sky, and you turn to share it with someone, and there's no one there, and you feel an emptiness. You know, you want to share this moment of excitement, but there's no one there to share it with, and you feel alone. I've been on the plains in the Karoo of South Africa, where there are tiny little bushes in amongst the vastness of sandy soil or rocky soil. And you're there, and there's not even a radio station that you can pick up. There's no cell phone signal. There's no house to be seen. There's no sign of any living soul or any evidence of people living except the road that you're on. And you feel a sense of being alone. I've had the opportunity to be in a state of paralysis. Temporary, thank God, temporary paralysis. And lying and being fully awake and being able to see and to be able to imagine, but not being able to move not even a finger. And you feel in that moment alone, isolated. There's so many examples that one can think about. I think of, you know, standing at the foot of my father's bed when he was at his end, and standing there and looking at him, and him saying to me, "I'll see you tomorrow." And saying it in such a way that you better come tomorrow because I want to see you. But saying that, and that tomorrow not coming. And you feel in that moment alone, helpless. You can't do anything. I know there's people this evening talking about or thinking about those kinds of things. And there's so many examples that I thought about in preparation for for this evening. You know, feeling alone in the darkness, but also feeling alone in the light, feeling alone at dawn and feeling alone at sunset. Maybe feeling alone on top of a mountain, but also feeling alone in the center of a crowd. There's many places to feel alone. But feeling alone is not the same as standing alone. You know, our previous session, for those of you who haven't watched it, session number 86 or show number 86 was about it's time to take your stand. And I thought about that and realized that standing sometimes is a thing you do alone. There was a moment when I was on a bus of drunken students. And those who know me know that I don't touch alcohol. And so I was alone in that environment. But in that environment, when something was happening that was not right, I had to stand alone and repel that which was wrong. But tonight, the image I want to leave with you is that of a seed. A seed does something, maybe involuntary, but it is destined. Its whole life is about going into a foreign environment, about burying itself in dirt, going into a place where it cannot see, being in a place where it has never been before. It is foreign, it is dark, it is wet, it is it seems as if everything around you is attacking and trying to destroy your very existence. And within a short space of time, you begin to feel yourself disintegrate. But in that moment, a tree is born. A forest begins to live. And it's because of that kind of stand that the seed takes that the forest once in the future will stand. Maybe we need to understand that the idea that has been birthed inside of you, maybe not even the idea that's birthed inside of you, but the very fact that you have been birthed is an idea to meet a need. Imagine if you are the solution that the world is waiting for. Imagine if you are the gift that we all desire. Imagine if you have within you the solution to someone or some community or some country or some continent's biggest problem. Don't withhold that gift. Make a stand. Stand up. You know, maybe you're sitting in a place where you are aware of all kinds of negativity, corruption, and different things, and you catch yourself in the process of pointing fingers, or maybe you tempted to make excuses. In fact, you may have a whole book of excuses to choose from. You know, you just run down the list, pick that one, and post it. But when you stand alone, it means that you don't succumb to the temptation of making an excuse, of giving in, of giving up, of quitting, but you make a stand. Your dream that has been placed inside of you, your vision of the future that you have already seen, is something worth standing for. And in that, you will be required to stand alone. But you know, when the tree stands alone, it provides shade for the weary. It provides fruit for the hungry. It provides a nest and a shelter for those who need it. The question this evening is, what are you standing for? Are you simply going for the flow, with the flow? Are you falling for everything, or are you standing for something? Are you swimming upstream? Are you going against the tide? Are you here to conform or transform? Tonight is a night of questions. I know that within you, you understand that you need to stand. And I hope that today is going to be the start of you standing up for your dream, for you to defend your dream with all that you are, so that you can one day die empty, having delivered your gift effectively, efficiently, and in such a way that it can continue to live beyond your life. I was saying to Henny earlier this evening that when you choose a topic to speak on, you have this feeling that you could write a volume of books on that topic. And here I am this evening, alone on screen, talking with you. But at the same time, I stand alone in the dream that God has placed in my heart. And to that, I remain committed. Join me and let's commit together to the things that God has placed on our heart, so that together we can touch lives and transform people. I'll see you in a few moments. Henny, thank you for joining me this evening. This is a moment that's going to go down in history as you shine out of your darkness when you are in a part of South Africa that is powerless. Well, so the world may think, but we know differently. You are not powerless at all.
Exactly. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I think choice of words make a big difference. I might be without electricity, but not without power.
Amen. Henny, I was as I was preparing this evening, there were so many different examples that I could think about of feeling alone, and maybe you've got some examples of times when you have felt alone, or of people in your family or friends or whatever that have felt alone. And I thought maybe we should just get those kind of things out the way. Talk a bit about them, because there's a couple of people out there that they think they're going through something that no one else has gone through before, and they're feeling alone in this space. And so let's just take away those excuses that they might have by sharing some of the things that you are aware of where people might have felt alone in their life.
Let's start with something that's happened close to, let's say, 3 years ago. I was happily married, had two boys. At that point, the oldest was in matric or grade 12 here in South Africa. And my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and they gave her 12 months to live. She did manage to survive a little bit longer, but only for about 15 months. So in April, it would be 3 years ago, I lost my wife. Everything was going perfect. She went to the doctor because she had a cough that was hurting in her chest. Saw the doctor, and he said, "This is stage 4 cancer." you go through a process where I went through a process where it felt like she was fighting a fight, but I was standing alone fighting a fight as well, to be there and to support her. So for me, that was, I think, a key moment where I really felt alone. Also had in the back of my head this, well, what happens if she's not there anymore? And yeah, it was in the time that you call preparation, Glen, the big preparation. You weren't allowed to hospitals and things like that. One evening we were having dinner. My wife had a epileptic attack, was taken to hospital by an ambulance, and we never saw her again because I wasn't allowed to be in the hospital. I think that was like the big one for me. Woke up the next morning and I was alone. There wasn't anybody to share anything with. It leaves you feeling alone. A lot of things that you take for granted is all of a sudden missing. But the eldest one was in matric and the youngest one was there. Life goes on. It's not waiting for anybody. So I think the first 2-3 days, the alone was actually very nice. I got some sleep in while my wife was fighting. There wasn't a lot of sleep, so it was pretty cool. But then this emptiness, this loneliness starts hitting you. And in hindsight, I think it's part of a training school. It's part of a process that you go through where you learn things that make you stronger for the day that you will have to stand alone and make your mark. So I see that as a training school, and I think that was the biggest standalone for me. Was to say, half of me is gone. When you marry, they say two becomes one. Half my heart is shared, and all of a sudden, half of it was gone. So this was me being alone, standing alone. In hindsight, like I said, looking back at it right now, that is a growth process. That's where you start learning. That's the things that makes you strong, that makes you believe in yourself to say, you know what, I can stand alone. I can do this. I can stand up for myself. And I think after that, my Map for Life journey actually started. And off the topic, if you're in the Map for Life community, you're never alone. So you're never going to stand alone. There's always a community, a Map Cafe, people around you that's going to hold your hand.
Not around you. I'm sitting right next to you. I'm right next to you.
Next to me. So I think then you start getting a purpose. Once you've got a purpose, once you know what you want to do, you're actually not standing alone. You're actually standing up for yourself. Then the alone is really gone. You've got that urgency, and I think my wife gave me that feeling of, what happens if I don't wake up tomorrow? Did I do what I was supposed to do? Did I lose all the opportunities that I had to take a stance? And I said to myself, it's not going to happen. I will stand up. I will take a stance. My vision is to empower people to find their purpose in life, because we are losing out. And I think that's where I started. So standing alone for me, not something that I'm afraid of, something that I'm looking forward to. If it means that achieving my vision and it means me being alone, then that is what I will do. And I'm looking forward to it.
You know something, Henny, as you're talking there, I don't. Your situation's not unique, and there's a lot of people that have gone through a similar situation to what you have, and you know, with all of these things, I think there's that old adage that says they either make you bitter or make you better, and sometimes through what is perceived a curse, a blessing comes, and you start having all the wonderful memories. You know, you start thinking back of all the great things that you did together and the things that you learned, and then there's a new season that comes along, and I'm sure that you can talk about those things. But I was thinking about something just now that you are engaged in, and I mentioned it before we started, and that was that you have done the translation of of the gems for 2023, the personal leadership precedes organizational leadership focus. And you've translated that into Afrikaans. And I know that in that process of doing it, you're actually alone. I mean, you're there on your own, but the difference in that alone that you're doing is you're actually standing for something. There's an outcome that is driving you, that keeps you going, that keeps you inspired, that keeps you motivated. Maybe you can just explain a bit or talk a bit about that experience, because there you were, the only Afrikaans guy in the whole country doing something that you're not being paid for. You're doing it because you have a bigger vision. You can see something happening. I don't know. What was your experience during that process?
You know, that's one of those funny things where we spoke about it, and you think, well, why can't we have Map for Life in Afrikaans? Well, because nobody's volunteered or nobody's had the courage to just take that step. Now, my background is not languages or anything like that. I'm in IT. I'm a business analyst. I'm analyzing businesses, and I could have used that as an excuse to say, well, I don't know how to translate. I got given the 52 gems and what it looked like in English. And I started. The first one took a little bit longer than I anticipated, and it wasn't that easy. It's not saying, well, this word is that in Afrikaans kind of thing, because context gets lost as well. And what needed to happen was me just starting. So the first gem came out, probably changed it 3 or 4 times, had the family involved, had the kids involved to say, I'm reading something, does it make sense? No, what are you trying to say? So it was a process. And the funny thing is, when you start with something, it becomes more and more exciting, because I set my goal to say, if I can do 1 or 2 a day, it should take me a month or so, we should have something. But then it starts getting nice, because I do one, just another one. Okay, it's 2:00 in the morning. Well, it's already past my bedtime, so let's just do another 3 then while I'm at it. And then you start getting people excited, and people start joining in, because all of a sudden now they want to be part of this process. So I think it needs one person to just stand up and say, I'm prepared to be alone for a short while, but the masses will be following me. As soon as I pick up the momentum, there will be people joining me. And the momentum has picked up. I mean, we're speaking about the Afrikaans, but there's 6 or 8 other languages in the process as well. There's people that's getting interested. There's people that's getting excited about momentum to say, let's make a difference. Let's do things. You just need one person that's prepared to stand up, stand alone for a second, to go, and then it can happen. And I think that's how I experienced it.
You know, Henny, you're so right. I mean, as a result of that process of starting, we now have the Map for Life gems in Swahili done for the first quarter. We have them in isiZulu done for the first quarter. They are going to be coming out in Punjabi, in Arabic, in French. I mean, you've kickstarted a whole bunch of things. I was thinking for a moment that you like that little stone. Well, you're not so little. you know, all 1.92 meters of you. You know, it's like throwing that little pebble in the pond. You know, and as it hits in the pond, that wave goes out, and there's nothing in the pond that escapes that wave. Every single thing in that pond is going to be touched by that wave. And so what you've done in standing alone and getting it done is you've actually created a ripple effect that is going to go through the eons of time, because, you know, people are going to improve on this. They're going to add to it. They're going to grow it. They're going to be inspired by it. They're going to connect with who they really are. They're going to become leaders as a result of and I shouldn't use the word translate, because we're not in the process of translating. We're in the process of interpreting and then reproducing the message, not reproducing the content, if that makes sense. It's not this kind of translating directly. You actually have to understand and you have to interpret the meaning so that the person gets it in the right context, as you were saying. What else can we talk about in terms of standing or making a stand for something? I'm thinking of something, maybe that a story that I can relate, and I'm sure you've got something that you can relate as well. When I was the age of 13 or thereabouts, I was at a holiday venue where we would spend our Christmas holidays. Family and friends would all gather over December. I think my grandfather was still stuck in the past, the wagon days, when they would pack up a wagon. It would take them the whole day to get from the farm to the beach. Fortunately, it was close by, but it was about 10 kilometers from his farm to the beach. So they'd take this wagon with all the oxen, they would go down, they'd build camp, and they would stay there for a whole month, because it takes such a lot of effort to get there. But as things improved and as buildings went up and there was no longer tents, there were no longer wagons, but real buildings, and there was electricity and power and all these things, and we could get there in 5 minutes, we still stayed for a month because it was such a good thing. And on one of those occasions, and when I say one of those occasions, I think there's always the person in the group who may drink excessively, and maybe some people can relate. Maybe some people know someone in their family who, they talked about as the party animal on some occasions, but they're not really. They actually have a drinking problem. And there was this guy who happened to be 56 years of age, which is where I am at present. And he was so inebriated that he couldn't walk. And I was standing on his right side as a 13-year-old, and my uncle was on his left-hand side as a 21-year-old or thereabouts. And we began to help him to his room. And as we were helping him to his room, we had a discussion. And the discussion was that we would never find ourselves in such a position where we would embarrass ourselves because of our excess drinking. I decided in that moment that I would never touch alcohol, because I imagined that maybe there's a gene that runs in the family, and if I touch this stuff, I could end up like this guy. And my uncle, who was only 9 years older than me, agreed that he was also going to do the same thing. And sadly, at the age of 39, he passed away as a result of, or one of the contributors was alcohol. And I remember having to stand for my decision time and time again. Even today, you go to a place and people are shocked that you don't take alcohol or something. But now it's easy. But in the beginning, it was difficult. I remember when I turned 16, the first thing that your father or your grandfather does is say, "You're now old enough, here's a beer." And no, thank you, I don't drink. And you're viewed as an outcast. And so standing up for something does cost something in the beginning, but in the long term, there is great value. And I had the picture of a loving family in the future, not one that was falling apart. which is what I saw where alcohol abuse was evident. So that's just one example that I can, a personal example that I can share. And I was wondering whether you are aware of something of that kind that maybe you can share with people this evening, that demonstrates that there's an investment to be made when you make a stand. Don't expect it to come easy. It's going to cost you something.
Let me start with the story that I read. These two brothers grew up, and their dad was also an alcoholic, and they didn't see a lot of him because whenever he got home, he was dangerous. So they went to their rooms, etc. And they did some research, and they spoke to these boys about 20, 30 years later. One of them was super successful. He was married, had a loving wife, nice kids. He was a director in a company, lots of money. He was really successful in the way that we know it. The other brother was an alcoholic himself, in the process of going through a divorce, lost his wife, lost his kids, didn't have a place to stay, etc. And they spoke to both of these guys, and they said, well, you grew up in the same house. How could your lives be so different? And the funny thing is, both of them answered, well, look at my father. One of them decided to say, I will be like my father. And the other one said, my father is not the perfect example. I can be better than that. So I'm going to make a difference to be better. And I think that's the key thing for us. We need to have a purpose. Another example is Tony Robbins once said, you can't hire someone to do your push-ups for you. I'm a road runner. I had this dream of saying, I want to run the Comrades. And for you that don't know what the Comrades is, that's 87 Ks on the road from Durban to Pietermaritzburg or the other way. And to do that, you need to put in effort. You need to stand up for yourself. You need to put in the miles and the hours to go and achieve that. It's not always easy. It's a lot easier if you've got what we call an accountability partner. If I had a running friend that said, no, I don't feel like running this morning, and he says, come on, we need to do 10 Ks today. It makes things a hell of a lot easier when you've got that. You need somebody that you can take with. But ultimately, it starts with you. I could have said, I want to run the Comrades, but I'll do it when I'm ready for it, kind of thing, and I'm not going to stand up for it. I had to make that stand. And I think the key thing for me is really, if you know what you want. I wanted a medal to say that I've completed the Comrades. That is an achievement. That's what I was looking for. That was a big enough why for me to do what I needed to do. So I think if we look deep inside ourselves, when we find that why, then the standing up, the being alone part, I think is not that difficult. I think that's the easy one. As long as you know why you're doing it, it becomes a lot easier. It's not easy, but it becomes easier.
You know, when you talk about that, I remember many years back listening to, for our younger listeners, it was a cassette tape. And you just need to go and ask mom and dad what a cassette tape is, or maybe even ask grandpa and granny what a cassette tape is. I still remember when I was at varsity and they talked about the CD coming out, and and how excited we were, and how on earth could that work? So, the indestructible CD that would never scratch. Well, they eventually maybe got to that point, but it was interesting when you talked about easy to do, and this particular speaker was saying the things that require you to be successful in life, and let's use Map for Life language, the things that require you to be significant and to leave a mark or to start something that lives on beyond you are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. And the example that he was using, he said, it's easy to put a cassette tape in the radio, in the tape player in your car. It's easy to do that. You just have to push it in and press play. In fact, it just starts playing as soon as you pushed it in. He said, but choosing the right CD to put in there is what makes a difference. And I think perhaps when it comes to making a stand for something, to stand up for what is right, perhaps, or to, when you were talking last week about the missing puzzle piece and realizing that you are the missing puzzle piece and that you're going to have to fit yourself in and put yourself in there so that you can complete the picture. That is something that we just going to have to do, and we need to realize it's easy to do it. Just as it is easy not to do, it's also easy to do. So that message that you just shared this evening triggered that, and I was also thinking more on a humorous side and saying, well, maybe you need to pay me to do your push-ups. I'll benefit twice. I'll get into shape, and I'll get some cash in the process. Maybe we should introduce that. Perhaps people's habits will become entrenched as a result. Henny, what other insights have you had this evening, or thoughts maybe that have been inspired as a result of the talk, or of things that you've been reading or listening to? I know that recently you've been listening to that guy from Fiji Islands speaking, and in fact, it was the same guy, Tony Robbins, the same guy. I bought a set of 31 cassette tapes back in 1991. And I had to listen to one tape every day for 31 days. And that was one of the first things that I did of a personal development nature. And after 10 years of reading books and listening to those kinds of tapes, eventually I said, hang on, I need to do something about this stuff and not just listen to it. And so that resulted. So I could potentially say that the start of Map for Life was actually listening to Tony Robbins back in 1991. But yeah, just some thoughts from your side that maybe have been triggered.
I've always had personal development, I think, as a hobby of mine. I always wanted to learn more. When the kids were born, give me books. How do I become a good parent? I've always wanted to be the scholar for the rest of my life, and I think it didn't change. I still want to be a scholar. I got excited with Tony Robbins, with Peter Sage, Robin Sharma, the guys of the world, and they have these awesome talks, and you get excited. But after a week or two, it dies down because you're doing nothing about it. It was something that happened. And then I met this clever gentleman called Glen McQuirk that said, everybody's got a purpose in this world that it cannot live without. So I do have a purpose, which means that I can actually have the dreams that I've got. But the missing puzzle piece for me, once again, was just, what do you do to get there? And I think that's what Map for Life made Map for Life different than anything else. It was a process, a structured process that I could follow. And we spoke about the easy and the easier. For me, the key thing that stood out, there's actually two. One of them is writing things down. While I was going through the process, I was writing things down. Believe it or not, it's a simple thing to do. Put something on paper. Small things. And as a simple example, to quickly digress, I put down I needed to spend some time with my wife. I got remarried, so I've got a living wife, and we were living two different lives. We were both busy, and I just wrote down on a piece of paper one of the things to say while I was building this. What is important? I need to spend time with my wife. I need to make time. That's all I did, nothing else. And about 2-3 weeks later, she said to me, I see we are meeting each other a lot more. We're chatting a lot more. And I thought, all I did was write it down. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, I think that is the biggest thing for me, is something called habits. I took that to heart. I started creating a session for myself. Every morning I spend an hour getting myself ready for the day. And the habits are the things that make you different. Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. That's never going to work. You're always going to get the same result. If you start putting things down to say, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to get, if you start changing and creating those habits, I think what you want to do becomes a lot easier. If your focus is to do something and you've created the habits that supports it, standing alone is never standing alone. It doesn't even feel like it. It just means that I can't see the people that supports me or runs with me because they're behind me at that point in time. And I think for me, that was the key thing, was just the structured process that I had to stuck to. That is definitely working for me to say, that's where I'm going. The habits are growing. I'm somebody different. I'm doing things differently. And I think that makes the difference. That makes it easy to say, I don't care what people think of or say of me. I am not interested in becoming successful. I need to be significant. And the biggest difference there is, I think, in my mind, success is about people, is about yourself. Significance is about the people around you. What difference can I make in people's lives? And I think if you make that paradigm shift, you're never going to stand or feel like you're standing alone.
Making a purposeful difference, as we say in MAP. Henny, you've touched on two really important points, and I just want to encourage our viewers, I think is the right term when you're doing video. Or maybe there's some people that aren't watching, but they're listening. I just want to encourage you to do exactly what Henny has said, and that is to go and write down your big idea. And, when you write down your big idea, it usually inspires a bigger idea and a bigger idea. And there's something significant about the act of writing that idea down. When you write it, it's almost as if it commits all the angels of heaven to conspire for you and make it happen. So really, just go and write it down. There's been so many examples. I just saw on my LinkedIn profile the other day that I've been part of MAP for Life for 24 years. I was amazed. I didn't realize it was 24 years of MAP for Life. I've been telling people 23. But in that time, Henny, there's been so many examples that people have shared with me where they've said, all I did was write it down. I didn't do anything. I can't claim that I was the reason for this success. It just happened. When I look back, I remember in Cape Town once, I was there doing a training in November, and one of the participants came, he said, before I came for the training today, I thought I must just quickly dust off my map, which I did in the beginning of the year. And he said, I wrote down in the beginning of the year that I wanted to start my own business. And that was so far from any realm of possibility. It was just not going to happen. And then out of the blue, in September of that particular year, he was called in by the board, and they said, listen, our plan is to close the office here in Cape Town. We would like you to relocate to Johannesburg. And he said, well, actually, I don't want to leave Cape Town. I want to stay here. What are my options? And they said, well, the only option you have is to accept a retrenchment package. And so he accepted that and started his own business, and which he started in October of that year. And in November, he dusted off his map and found out in his map, part of his top 10 goals was to start his own business. And he had already started it without even having, he didn't have the resources in January, but by September, he was able to do something because he received this retrenchment package. So, there's many examples where seeming miracles take place. But then the second thing you talked about was this thing called a habit. And that is something that needs an accountability partner, somebody who can just support you. And I think as you were talking about that habit idea, and of course the MAP Club is designed to support people. We have MAP Cafe sessions every week. MAP talks regularly and so on. So we would really love you to join one of those sessions because you have value and wisdom within you that's beyond your understanding. And it's in the Map Cafe environment that you're able to share that, and we can all learn, which is great. So, as you were talking about this whole habit idea, I just began to appreciate the value of having that accountability partner and journeying with someone, because you can fight any kind of battle that comes your way when you know you have somebody standing in your corner supporting you. And that for me is the value in a marriage, is that you're there for each other. When your husband or your wife is going through a difficult time, there's somebody there to support that person. And I just hear in my mind right now all of those single moms out there, single dads, people that have lost a spouse, maybe in an old age home, and you're feeling all alone. I want to tell you that in Map for Life, we stand there with you. I was thinking of the people fighting in the war right now, and how many nations have come together to support Ukraine. And it's in that knowledge that there are people that have got their back, that they are able to bravely step into harm's way and continue towards their vision of being victorious. And so in Map for Life, we want to be that for you. We want to stand in your corner. We want to be your encourager. We want to be your supporter. We're not only going to be there standing behind you, we're going to stand alongside you. We're going to walk into battle together. And your dream is absolutely worth it. Henny, our time is almost up, and I think we should maybe ask you to close this evening off with something. You've got so many words of wisdom that you keep sharing, so we're gonna ask you to pick out one of those words of wisdom or something that stood out from this evening to end the show. And I'm gonna say goodnight to everybody from my side. It's been wonderful having you join us this evening, and I just want to say to you, you're not alone. You're not alone. When there are only your footprints on the beach, those are the moments where God is carrying you through the difficult times. So you're not alone. You can never be alone. And I'm going to let Henny close this evening. And when he says goodnight, I'll play a short video, and that'll be it for this evening. Remember to join us next week, Wednesday. Henny, over to you.
Perfect. I don't know how many of you have experienced this before. Something doesn't go right. Let's say there's a congestion, there's a one queue, and everybody is in this queue and everybody is just complaining and not doing anything about it. And then all of a sudden, someone decides, I've had enough, and he creates a second queue, or he just uses another option, goes past the obstacle in some other way. And all of a sudden, you see a lot of people following him. I think that's where we are right now. We need people that wants to go somewhere, and there are lots of people that's willing to follow. Remember, life is happening for us, not to us. So let's go and live our lives. Go make sure that you appreciate what you want to do in life. There will be people following you. There's a lot of people out there waiting for somebody to just take the lead that they can follow. And that person that can take the lead is you. Go and be leaders. Go and live the life that you were supposed to live. Good evening. Enjoy your evening.
Today, for me, today for you, today for each of us, is an opportunity and an invitation to step into a world of abundance where your life matters, where your vision makes a difference, where the world will know that once upon a time in the past there was a man or a woman who rose to the calling of God in their life and made the impact that they were designed to make. And you have that ability. Just die to self, surrender to Him, and become significant. I couldn't be more excited for you. I could not be more excited about the future, because every person that you equip to take that step of putting a plan together for their life, a plan that is aligned with the desires of their heart, those people, those children, young and old, are going to come alive, and they're going to cause a ripple that goes through time that impacts the lives of others. Make the choice today to live a life of significance.